Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming along to this panel today. I work at the Association of British Insurers, which is a trade association that represents the views of insurers to legislators and regulators, as well as providing lots of other opportunities for people in the insurance sector to come to events like this. I'm going to invite the panel to come up and introduce themselves, if that's okay. So if you'd like to come up. We're here to talk to you today about the biggest opportunities and challenges facing health and life insurers. On the app, you can submit questions. That's what this iPad is for, so that I can ask your questions to our fantastic panellists. But I'll just invite you one at a time to introduce yourselves and maybe some opening remarks around what you think the biggest opportunities and challenges are facing health and life insurers. I will start at the far end and work back in. Jim,
I was expecting you to start at the other end, and then I could listen to what everybody else had said and come up with some crafty comments at the end. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jim Searle. I'm Chief Operating Officer at WPA, which is a health insurer here in the UK. My background is military and then consultancy and then into insurance from there. I guess thinking about the opportunities and challenges. So opportunities first, I think we're on a kind of technological cusp at the moment in terms of generative AI and how that's going to change some of the ways that we can do our business in terms of developing software faster and therefore meeting kind of needs of our customers more quickly. The challenges at the moment for any health insurer are effectively the performance of the NHS, effectively it's collapsing. So all of our customers are now choosing to execute against their policies, which has not always been the case. So we're seeing people dive into health insurance in a way they've never done before in the UK. It's an opportunity, but it's a huge challenge for us while that transition takes place in terms of cost control. I'll hand over.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Vikas, Gujral. I'm part of the Bupa's UK insurance executive team. I've spent more than 20 years in insurance and across Asian geographies, as probably you can tell, and in UK. So I'm responsible for transformation, digital strategy, and customer experience at Bupa. In terms of opportunities and challenges, I guess, for health insurers like WPA, those would be similar. We do see a great opportunity, especially post-pandemic, in terms of growth. So we are witnessing well-rounded growth in all segments, whether it's B2B or consumer segments. So that's good opportunities in areas of moving from, let's say, traditional PMI to more wellness space, well-being, mental health, and so on and so forth. That's, I think, really a big opportunity for us, and opportunity in terms of utilizing and leveraging digital technology to create more connected care experiences for our policyholders. So those are some of the opportunities that from where we see it. In terms of challenges, they are related to growth itself. Like Jim mentioned, we are experiencing an uptick, a bounce back in claims for last 6 months or so. So that's a challenge that we are dealing with. And related to growth, the challenge around how do you manage rising front-end demand in this tight labor market, attracting front-end resources, retaining them, motivating them, and making sure that your service standards and your customer experience is held or improved. So those are some of the challenges from our perspective.
Afternoon, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm Amelia Carroll. I head up corporate strategy at YuLife. Prior to that was in consulting for a bit, and prior to that at MetLife. If you haven't heard of YuLife before, we are a group insurer who work with employers to incentivize their employees to live happier and healthier lives. How we do that is we have an app that makes it easy for people to access preventative tools like EAPs and virtual GPs, obviously holds all their insurance information and also incentivizes healthy habits like walking and mindfulness. So for us, I think one of the biggest opportunities and challenges is really how do you get people engaged in their insurance, particularly employees. Traditionally in life, you probably don't even know who your life insurer is. How do we take that and actually transform it into something that is valuable for an employer and employee pretty much every day?
Brilliant. And how are you using technology to improve that accessibility and engagement, and I guess also transparency with the claims process as well?
So for YuLife, I mean, our kind of big differentiator in the market is kind of that engagement piece. So if you bought Group Life, let's say, through YuLife, we would work with an employer to roll out our YuLife app, which is a place where they can see all of their insurance policy details, where they can see all of their benefits that both YuLife provides, and like I said, things like EAP, and also things that the employer might provide anyway for benefits of people. And we get the kind of high engagement because we have these basically incentives to do things like walking and mindfulness. So for us, technology is all about making it really easy to engage. I think that's kind of the critical thing, connecting lots of different things that traditionally have maybe been at like a footnote on an intranet page and putting that into the palm of people's hands, and making it fun as well. I don't know if you've kind of seen some of the YuLife branding, but it's got lots of colour and giraffes and things like that, and that's very different for an employee to engage with. So I think having technology be fun is a nice thing to do and gets people actually using it. I guess these guys can talk a little bit more around the kind of claim side. Yeah,
definitely. I use my health insurance app in a way that I didn't engage with when there were posters on the filing cabinets about the employee assistant programme, etc. When we were speaking before, Jim, you mentioned things around signposting and nudging in terms of benefits. It'd be great to hear more about that.
Yeah, I kind of guess that follows up on Amelia's piece. So I think, again, this is kind of something that the industry is just starting to think about. And this is going to pick up for the rest of the decade in terms of where technology can take us. So most of us now have a connected device on our arms that links into an app that tells us how we've slept, how many steps we've walked, what our heart rate is. Now, at the moment, we've got an app, Digital Health, that can tell you, you need to walk a bit more, sleep a bit more, eat a bit less. So we're all kind of getting used to that as a thing, right? In the future, where's that going to be? Well, it's probably going to be linked to some form of large language model that takes all of that data all of the time and crunches it, and that then looks at a medical dictionary and starts looking at your blood pressure, your heart rate, all of these kind of things, and is there as a virtual GP in the background, not a GP, more than a GP. And so we're probably going to be, by the end of the 2030s, we'll all have something in our pocket that's always looking out for, do you have the signs of a stroke, a coronary heart attack, something like that? Are you stressed? Do you need to go and see somebody? So nudges will turn into actual actionable advice much more. And I think that's great for the insurance, for the insurer, and it's great for the insured, as in we're going to be able to pick up much more, much earlier on and help people earlier on in that journey. And, there's some technology that's going in a different space in terms of bloods and being able to pick up cancer very, very, very early on. When combined with the kind of stuff that we're going to have strapped to our wrists, stuck in our pockets, and maybe just beneath our skin as well, I think the nudges will turn into, you need to take this seriously, you need to do something about it. That's good for us, it's good for everybody that we insure.
Yeah.
It's also good for the employers as well. Like not just
absolutely.
From a kind of cost and claims perspective, but I think genuinely what we see is that employers do really, really care about well-being. They don't just sort of say it. It's not a tick box anymore. It's like a really high priority agenda item for many CEOs and businesses. So to be able to get their people healthier, happier, more productive, taking less sick days, whatever it might be, is so good for them as well. And that's where...
Yeah, I completely agree.
I'll come back to employers in a second, because they're such an important part of this market. It'd be really good to get your views on employers. Vikas, I just wanted to bring you in on Jim's point around kind of the wealth of data that we're going to have if people, input things like their bloods, have something under their skin, something in their pocket. We were speaking earlier about well, you mentioned earlier market segmentation. Do you see these types of advances enticing a wider audience to the sector, or do they particularly appeal to different market segments, or how's the approach at Bupa?
Yeah, it does, and it depends on, I mean, we as a strategy, Bupa as a strategy is not particularly focused on, let's say, a specific target age group or a segment. We want to have propositions which are appealing to all segments, target segments of our customers. But yeah, we're doing lots of stuff around. Just we were talking about digital GPs. Just last month, we had more than 67,000 digital GP appointments just in 1 month, which we would have never imagined, let's say, a couple of years back. So we are looking at providing our customer base an omni-channel kind of a experience, depending on, there are still lots of people who want to talk to you on the phone, but at the same time, there are lots of people who would rather do it on their app. So the idea is, how do we take out the effort and friction from simple processes like pre-auth, for example, where I was sharing with you, we are working towards a state where we create an ecosystem where everything is connected, and you don't need to call up your insurers, take an authorization code, and then call your consultant, book a meeting, and so how can all that be connected in a connected care kind of a system? And we've made quite a bit of progress in that area to bring that to life. And I do believe, having come from a different geography, that we have a lot of friction and effort on customers' part for simple things like going for a treatment or to a consultant here in UK, and that's a big opportunity that we believe we need to sort of crack, along with a lot of other players in the overall healthcare ecosystem overall. So I don't know whether I answered your question in terms of target segment or not, but yeah, like I said, for our different, whether it's corporate, whether small, medium enterprises, or our direct to consumer, we have propositions which are targeting, different segments, and we don't have a specific target segment that we want to sort of prioritize amongst that. Yeah.
And is that the same across YuLife and WPA? Or in terms of you using these technologies and working with propositions across different segments of the market, or do you see particular groups, whether it's younger people or people who may be in their 40s and 50s, kind of engaging with these types of technology to grow the market?
I think it totally varies. So a lot of people will come to us and think that our app, where some of the things on there is you can kind of play kind of daily challenges and games and do that, to try and beat step counts, that kind of thing. A lot of people think that would actually really attract the youngest people, but actually the most popular age group for that, I think, is like women over 45. So there's something that we're trying to do that makes something interesting for everyone. So to your point about, tracking habits and all of this stuff, some people are never ever going to want to track how many glasses of water they drink a day, and all of these things. Some people are just absolutely not interested in it and never will be. Some people will really be angry at themselves if they miss one input into some of these trackers and apps and everything else. There's very different ways that people approach it. We were talking just before that you will always have people who would just want to pick up the phone and talk to someone, and however many alerts they get that they've got a medical issue coming up in whatever format, is just not going to be, what they want. So I think the big thing is just variety is going to be needed, because I don't think it's necessarily an age group segmentation thing. I think it's just like a personality thing. People have totally different ways that they are going to approach their health, and if we can find ways that make people trust, and even we use the word love quite a lot at YuLife. We want people to love us, and and insurance products. Like if you can get people trusting you and loving your products and being, that partner with them, because, we have millions of customers between us, and those customers spend money. Like, we should be giving them something that they really want. But I think that that's lots of different things for lots of different people. So that's why all these connections of services is so important, because hopefully that means there will be something for everyone.
And I think it's the everyone point I'd pick up on. So something that we've been thinking a lot about at WPA, which kind of reflects our history as a mutual, is how do you reach out to the uninsured population? The top 10% of management get really good health insurance. The next 20% down get good health insurance, and quite often the next 30% 70% get nothing. And it's how do you kind of, especially at a point when the NHS is really struggling, how do you use technology? How do you use engagement? How do you use all of this clever stuff to give that 70% of people that work on the shop floor, and I'm wiggling my fingers when I say it, something? And that could be access to a digital GP. It could be access to digital musculoskeletal advice. So I've got back pain, you get a program that's sent through to you. It could be access to online counselling or mental health support. And it could be, the kind of preventative stuff that I was talking about earlier on, that just move a bit more, eat a bit less, and you'll probably feel a bit healthier. So it's how do you engage that 70% that quite often don't have an email address or a work email address? So how do you onboard them? How do you engage with them? And it's really, really hard. I mean, obviously we've solved it with our digital health app, but come and see me about that later. But it's really tricky in all seriousness to try and give everybody something. And I think that's a challenge. That's what we're talking to lots of corporates about. I think in terms of the ESG piece, people are starting to think about it more. Okay, I in my Range Rover in my 5-bedroom house in Surrey feel a little, that's not me by the way, I feel a little bit uncomfortable in the fact that actually the people that are generating value for the business, that are delivering shareholder value, have nothing and are in a 3-month queue to go to the GP and talk about their back pain or whatever it is. So I think we can solve that problem, and therefore we can kind of democratize access to what I call primary services and probably a bit beyond that, and solve hopefully some of society's problems, which is something we've been trying to do for 125 years.
What conversation, or what's coming out of the conversations that I imagine you're all having with employers about the important role that insurers play in keeping the workforce healthy? It's certainly something that was really eminent in the spring budget, and we're expecting a lot more to come out from government over the next 6 months on this. And from the ABI's perspective, and I'm sure yours as well, we want insurance to be spoken about in those debates of how we keep the workplace healthy. But as you've just identified, Jim, for a lot of the workforce that are on the shop floor, it's harder to get them to engage with the product, even if their employer is. So yeah, it'd be really great to hear kind of how you're thinking about that problem. Amelia, do you want to?
Yeah. So I think from an employer point of view, how we get them to engage, at YuLife we have what we call a customer success team, which a lot of group providers don't necessarily have, and that will work with the typically HR or benefits sponsor, whoever kind of bought the product, to roll out the YuLife app to everyone. That might be as simple as some email campaigns and you post on Slack and that kind of thing for smaller companies, right up to companies where actually a lot of people don't have an email address, and we have to help companies with posters and going to the warehouses and all of this to get people engaged. So that support that we can offer employers to roll out the services is been really great, and they really, really value. Most of these companies, I think your point about something for everyone is really important. Like, we're not trying to attract the healthiest risks. There's no point us trying to get a marathon runner to run a little bit faster. What is going to make a big difference to the employers is if we can get everyone, there's a lot of chronic health issues. Actually, a huge amount of them can be solved by just healthier living. There's a lot of, obviously, mental health challenges. These are the things where actually small interventions and prevention can make a big difference. So if we can get those people across the board walking that little bit more, walking 20% more in a year, that's a huge thing at a mass level for an employer. So I think, to answer your question, it's really all about helping employers articulate the services, helping them explain why things are important and helpful, and creating something, as we were discussing before, that employees want to use. We tried to create something that isn't a habit tracker or something that's a burden. We tried to create something that's quite fun to use, that people want to engage with, that gives them rewards that they want, and that's kind of what we're seeing success with so far.
Brilliant. Vikas, I might bring you in here and to talk about that point, but maybe elaborate. When we were speaking earlier, and you mentioned it briefly so far as well, kind of the increase in people wanting to access services through their products, which is obviously a success, they're using their products, but how you manage that in a way that continues to engage employees because they're still able to access those services despite the increased demand.
Yeah. So before I go there, I think from the employer's perspective, there is a little bit of, so if you are a life insurance player, you're going to the same employer and you're pitching the whole wellness pitch, If you're a health insurer, you're going and doing the same. And if you're YuLife, for example, you probably have even better proposition and you're going to pitch, you're going to, So from an employer perspective, while we definitely see a shift in that segment to move from, let's say, illness to wellness, well-being, mental well-being is a big demand that's coming. And who will capture that space is, I think, $1 million question. And therefore, our approach on that is two-pronged. Number one, we are creating like a tiered propositions. So and modular propositions. So if, let's say, at the top of that tier is your full-blown PMI, private medical insurance, expensive, cannot be afforded by, let's say, for everyone in the company. So we are currently working with partners who are leaders in their respective space, for example, who can provide the best mental well-being propositions. How do we create an ecosystem? We are already working with YuLife, for example, on some of the propositions. And how do you bring that entire ecosystem to bear in front of the employers? That's what we are working on. And working on, in the sense, very advanced stage. Some propositions are already there, where you start with something and there is something for everyone in the organization from an employer's perspective. So that is one thing that I wanted to add to the earlier discussion. And I forget, what did you actually ask me?
About keeping employees engaged, because there's an increase in people claiming and wanting to access services, and you need to kind of manage that increase in demand efficiently. And
yeah, I mean, so like I said, with our digital propositions, access to apps and digital GPs, there is obviously an uptick in demand that we are experiencing, and I think that's the case with most of the other health insurers. In a way, it's really good because you get quick access to care, and at the same time, we need to see the impact, long-term impact of that on our claim incidence rates and claims costs. So we will continue to deal with that. But there is absolutely no slowing of pace on our continuing to develop omni-channel propositions in the choice of channel that they want to deal with us, in terms of ease of access, connected care. How do we make sure that we guide them to the right care pathways digitally, which and as quickly as possible. So those are some of the things that we are working on.
Great. There's some questions from the audience, but do you want to add anything on the topic that we're speaking about currently, Jim, before
Not too much. I would just pick up on one point about, I think in terms of the challenges, we are facing a challenge in terms of consultants are aging. What's that going to look like in the future? As there's more uptick in health insurance, are we going to have the actual, people that can deliver that? Digitization, as you kind of mentioned, or digitalization might help, and but that's a challenge for us. How do we deal with that? In terms of the technology that might help that, obviously, we can use technology to make sure, as Vikas said, that people get to the right place more quickly, and we take the omni-channel approach as well. The only thing I caution about that, we very much sort of value the freedom to choose element as well, and that if you don't want to go and see the person that's closest to you for whatever reason that might be, I think it should be kind of within your agency to say, no, actually I'd prefer to go and see somebody else. Yeah. But that's choice, right? And I think we're all aligned on that ultimately customer choice is what we're trying to provide, and we're trying to provide that omni-channel solution, whether you want to WhatsApp us, phone us, chat with us, write us a letter, you'll be able to you'll be able to get through email. Yeah,
brilliant, thank you. Please do keep questions coming in from the audience. There's some really interesting ones here, some massive questions and some quite I guess where there's kind of a quite discreet answer. But start with one of the bigger ones, and anyone should feel free to take this. Do you anticipate fraud becoming more prevalent with the evolving use of tech in health and life insurance?
I mean, so there is fraud in health insurance, definitely. It doesn't normally. I don't think it's such a problem as in some of the other kind of types of insurance, because you're either going to have a surgery. If you think about that, most of that payments pathway will be done between us and the provider direct. There are, in the cash products, the cash plan products, there's more, there's probably a greater chance of that happening, of some fraud happening, but obviously without going into too much detail, we use technology to check, and we use physical checks on that kind of stuff. So we're pretty happy that it's not a huge issue for us. I don't know whether life, I mean, I guess you're either alive
hard to fake your own.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably even harder now with technology,
yes.
and Facebook and cameras and everything. But no, seriously, I don't think it's a big issue.
I don't think it's a material issue for health insurers, at least for the reasons that Jim mentioned.
Yeah, great. Here's quite a big question, and I guess it's one that's about the fundamentals of insurance, is that as people have more information about their health and well-being, is there a risk of kind of the pooling mechanism within insurance breaking down, and people who are higher risk seeking more insurance, and those who are healthy and told that they're healthy through technology not seeking it, essentially? To what extent do you think that that's a risk? Anyone can?
I mean, I think that's why group insurance is really important. I mean, for life, there's people, great companies who work on the basis of attracting the healthier risk, and that's the whole model, and that's a really fantastic model. And for those people, that is an amazing product, an amazing service. But that's why group is so important, because actually to have an employer's backing to really support getting life insurance is a massive benefit. It's a really important benefit for a lot of people.
I think in health, there's the way the industry is going, largely driven by brokers, is by having the no claims discount products. And I think that's a huge filter. So, if you have the kind of claims behavior that we look forward to, and you've done all the nudges that we've nudged you, you're not going to have to claim. If you do start claiming, just like in anything else, just like with car insurance or home insurance, there's going to be an uptick in your premium. And I think that's a natural kind of evolution of the industry to try and deal with that escalation of costs that we've seen.
Do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, I mean, the large volumes of business in UK in health insurance is driven by like what Amelia said, is group, and I think in group that risk is it's managed really well through yearly pricing and stuff like that. So yeah, and with things like no claim bonus and all, there are, but I think overall medical inflation is another important aspect, which I think will impact the industry. You talked about consultants. There is pressure on all the insurers, from the consultants, on increasing the price in line with inflation and all that, I think that is a bigger risk and a challenge for the industry overall in terms of how do you manage this rising cost, medical inflation.
I think the other point that's worth noting on that is we kind of all said a little bit already that I think all three of us and probably lots of people in this room are working towards trying to get everyone using something service-wise. So yes, some people will be even more easy to articulate that they're super, super healthy, but actually if we all do our jobs, hopefully everyone is getting a little bit healthier, or, you know, find out more information about their health and do something with it, or accessing more prevention services or whatever it is. So that would be the dream, that we actually do make a big impact to society and making society healthier.
Definitely. I think that's such an important role for this line of insurance. So far, we've spoken a lot about how you keep individuals healthier and how they can engage with technology. We've had a question about how can employers engage with dashboards and technology to manage the health of their workforce. It'd be great to hear your views on that. And Vikas, I don't know if you want to start on this one, or if you want some time to think.
Yeah, on this one, I think I'm going to pass on to Amelia. Probably she's much more into the employer value proposition in terms of what data dashboards they can see to see overall health of their employee base. So maybe you can add much more.
I think it's important to say that we're not at a stage when that we would share information about health, and actually because we're not on health insurance, we don't have a lot of that information. So I think there is always going to be an element that it's not an employer's role to know all of your medical information as such. So I think what we do share is that we have a portal for HR users or admin users where they can see what is being utilized. So they can see how many people are using our app every day, how many people are taking challenges, what their whole company's step count, you know, is looking at, and mindfulness engagement and engagement in preventative services like EAP and VGP and all of that. So they can see what impact they're getting back from their spend. I think that's really important. We don't put it in the context of health exactly, but what we do know is we did some research last year with Forrester of what all of that impact of just in general making people that little bit healthier can do long term on things like productivity and employee turnover and kind of days off sick. So you can kind of show at that level, but I think in terms of sharing information with employers, they've probably a bit of a way off. I mean, I think if anything, employees want reassurance that we wouldn't be sharing any of that information.
What we do with very regularly and very successfully from past many years is to organize lots of webinars on subjects like mental health, cancer, cardiac, which are very, very popular amongst, let's say, our group employee base and overall customers. You know, in the last one that we did a couple of weeks back on mental health, I mean, we had like more than 4,000, 5,000 people signing up, and great feedback, very engaged audience. So that's how we sort of, we believe we add value overall to in this space with actually reaching out and gathering the experts in that particular area, and then So.
Jim, do you have anything that you want to add in terms of communicating?
I think they've covered.
Yeah,
I mean,
great.
we obviously do exactly the same. We're all doing the same thing in that area.
Yeah. In that case, I'm going to come to you with a question that we were speaking about just before we came up onto the stage. And someone's asked, is it possible to completely do a digital self-triage? Is the technology mature enough, or does it still require telemedicine or video calls in support? And I guess for people to kind of understand or even input into a claims system, are we far enough along with technology that people can tell you exactly what's wrong with them to progress their claim?
Right now, no.
Yeah.
I would say that is coming. But obviously, so the more data you have on a person, and this is, we've built a health wallet in some of our products so we can kind of aggregate that data for the user, and the user is the individual, not their employer or us. But that can be shared in an emergency situation with a medical professional. So if you know that somebody's heart rate, their resting heart rate is normally 58, that they do X amount of steps a day, what their blood pressure is, what their kind of sleep cycle is. And once those things start to get out of whack, then a medical professional would be able to tell you, and I'm not one, but would be able to start to say, okay, well, we can start looking at certain things. And then with your temperature, your kind of, there's some other things we can do, your blood oxygen, all of that starts to give you a picture. Now, that's not going to say you've got appendicitis, but what it's going to say is, you need to go and see a medical professional pretty quickly, and then they'll join the dots much faster because they've got the background data. I think as again the models get better and people throw more compute at these things, are some of the diagnostics, the AI-driven diagnostics tools, getting as good as a professional? They're almost there, and in some places, analysing scans, they're as good. But I think we're going to be a while away before there's a regulated product that can give you this is exactly what's wrong with you without hands-on examination. And I don't think anybody would want that. What we're trying to do is get you to the right person faster, so that instead of taking up time in, at the GP, you might go straight to a consultant because, the thing is flagging X. Is it going to stop you having to go to A&E when you've broken your leg? Obviously not. But I think we're in a system with so many pressures on it that even 2%, if you take 2% out of the system, people will notice. It'll help free it up. But I think there's a lot of, sadly, a lot of that stuff isn't going on in the UK, but there's a lot going on in America in terms of technologies that will be able to kind of speed up that journey and get you to the treatment you need faster and more accurately. It's really interesting, and I kind of obsess about it a bit.
The right person to come to with that question in that case. We've had a question around, I guess, a lot changed during COVID. It now thankfully seems like quite a distant thing that you try to forget as much as possible, but we have been asked a question about it. And there were lots of changes in the way that people accessed health services and lived their lives during that time. Have some of the changes that you've seen during the pandemic shown that they're here to stay and will continue to be built into product design, or were things like people being more comfortable accessing GPs online just, I guess, something that happened then because they had no choice?
I think that's going to stay for quite a long time. I think I think you said it earlier, Amelia, everybody kind of started, or somebody did, everybody started using their health insurance apps in different ways. Everybody got used to using their health insurer, probably on a monthly basis. If you had it, if you wanted to look something up, or, one of your kids was a little bit ill, people were phoning and making huge amounts of use of the GP online service. 67,000 in 1 month sounds like a nightmare, by the way. I was like, wow. So I think that it pushed health insurance into the space that most of us are comfortable about with banking. And most of us have got an app, you've got an app, we've got an app. Most of it's allowed biometrics, so you don't have to remember a password. You can look at it or put your fingerprint on it. The challenge is actually making people engage with it and remember they've got it. Most people in our industry, it's awful to say, just assume they're with Bupa and are quite surprised when they're with WPA or one of the others. But I think COVID kind of digitalized that space much more. It got people much more used to online chat, to asynchronous WhatsApp type conversations, and engaging with the apps on not a weekly basis, but probably a monthly basis. And I think we saw something like a 10 times increase in people logging into the portals and downloading apps and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that's not going to go away. If you've done it right, if you've got the technology right, if you've got the experience right, it won't go away, because people will realize that's easier than phoning us or writing to us or emailing us. So it's about getting it right.
Brill. We have 1 minute left, and that seems quite, I guess, an optimistic point to wrap up in terms of what's going to be possible in the future, and that people are engaging with their products and services much more than perhaps they did in the past. With the last few seconds, put you on the spot a bit. What's one opportunity, if you can describe it in a few words or one sentence, that you're most excited about in the future? And whoever thinks of something first can go first.
I think generative AI is going to speed up the amount of products, the amount of innovation we can deliver to our customers by about a factor of 100. So I think instead of seeing a website change on a monthly basis, you'll see it change 5 times a day because it will be cheap enough to do so.
Yeah.
I think the connection of all the services and ecosystems and providers and this model of being a lot more in partnerships, not rather than competitors, I think that is a massive, massive opportunity and challenge because it's hard to do. Yeah. But, you know, if you can connect all the NHS services plus all the services you offer, plus other things that employee benefits offer, that's where suddenly a customer is going to have a hell of a lot more impact. And I think the other point is just what we were talking about earlier. You know, the whole well-being for everyone is massive as well. Like, how do you engage in everyone who's covered in a policy and pays for a policy, whether the employer pays for it or the employee, in that product?
Thank you. And Vikas, closing.
I think I'm really get excited about it. Talk about ecosystem a lot, and I think that's the future. And whosoever cracks it in this market, I think will be the winner. Everyone is developing pretty much the same thing, you know, everywhere. It's just that we need to work from customer backwards and bring everything together rather than piecemeal solutions by different organizations. I think that's the real opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us for the afternoon slot. And if you could say thank you to our panelists by a round of applause, that would be great. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.